All right, Sci-Fi Express Lane, Jeff Carroll, pulling out, ready to rock and roll. Today's subject is back to a different angle of being published by somebody and going independent. And it is really everything independent and everything published, distributed, signed to a record label. I mean, I like to kind of throw them all in there together and compare them, because again, my first world is industry is music, right? And I wasn't a musical artist. I just worked at a record company, but it's the one that I understand the best to be able to explain it. And I also feel that other people understand music real good, because music artists are very popular, and when it comes to film, people able to be actors, and there's a lot of moving parts with films. The most is the one with the most moving parts, and then you have books, and there's a lot more variation with deals with books. You don't really have an equivalent to like a vanity publisher in music. So music is relatively simple. Maybe a small label could be considered like a vanity publisher. But I mean, what I want to talk about with the independent versus getting a deal conversation is kind of collaboration, right? Collaborating, and what does that mean, right? I was supposed to Google what is the purpose of writing a story, what is the purpose of writing a song, and what is the purpose of making a movie. If there was a central definition or central purpose, it would be interesting, to know that. But I didn't, and I started recording before I was able to go online. But I don't know what Google says. I just give you my answer. And it's really to disseminate information. If you're writing a story, a novel, it's really to be entertaining, to make sure, at its core, to make sure the pages are turned and people are entertained in the process. And how do you get people to turn the pages and finish and want to read the book? It's not always a message. People would think, I wrote a message. No, if you write a corny message, it's like, I always joke and say conscious rap. But conscious rap, is a good example. You have a wholesome message. You the man. Black woman, you the queen. But if you say it in a corny way, your record's going to go wood. And that means not many people are going to listen to it. So even if you're singing about wearing safe sex, it better be Jim Browski. You come up with a cool name, make it sound hip, and you're in. But if you say it in a corny way, it's not really going to do it. What made me think of this was this book right here, Spoof Streets, is really, giving me a lot to talk about, with people, with people, with comics, with people in the industry, people I haven't talked to like in a long time. I'm having conversations with them, and it brings up the conversation of collaboration. And as I'm talking to them about it, I'm thinking about it. One of my artists, top comic writer, right? He's written television shows, specials, and not necessarily about this particular book, but about a TV show idea from this particular book. And he was like, yo, if I write a skit, I said, yo, you got any old skits you can use? He said, I'm going to use them all. Because if I'm going to give you a skit, say you have a show like A Living Color, and it does well, which all my skits should do well, that helps you. But people don't know who I am. So, now that they got AI technology, makes it a lot easier to do video references of my stories. Before you would do live action, you'd have to hire a crew. You'd have to put it all out there. And it was like, yo, if I just put it on my platform, I'm good, And if it blows up, it sells the rest of my stuff, And it almost makes me feel like, do you sell a song, right? Or do you sing it yourself and put it on your own album? And I think that is a conversation that is, do you stay independent or do you work within the system? And the system is a system of, songwriters, sketch writers, people, and, they work together. And I think there's really nothing wrong with either way. It's just that there's a different set of variables, right? Not necessarily obstacles. There's different things that go on. If you are writing for yourself, it's non-collaborative, but nobody else is going to help you. You're doing it all yourself. You're putting up your videos. It's like IG influencers. If you're working with a sketch group, then there's somebody assigned to putting up the videos. There's somebody assigned to writing and thinking of it. There's somebody assigned to setting up when we all going to tape the skit. But when you're doing it yourself, all of that, the marketing, the writing, the putting it up, the mechanics, is all on you. And that's it goes as far as you are. Whereas when you, work within the system and you're collaborating, the variable is all you're forming a fantastic four. You're forming a super team where everybody is helping to make this one particular project jump off. For me, I'm looking to do more of my spoof streets, and probably the part of this video that relates to me working on spoof streets is I have a story, and it's not necessarily a funny story, but it can be. And I was wondering, how do I market it? Is it going to be in spoof streets? Should it be in another spoof streets? Another streets story? I have all of these other types of books, so I was like, well, maybe I should come up with a different name other than spoof streets. Should I do spoof streets too? All of that, it connects to this story. And I was wondering, what is the purpose of telling a story? And I really feel that the story is going to be successful. It's just I don't know what to necessarily call the story, So I got on the wrong highway. When I think of the story, right, I'm thinking of, say, possible endings and tweakings and all of that stuff. And I don't think that necessarily needs to be done. I think, if anything, there's a collaboration that'll take place. My story will fit in with other stories or another story that I have, and it'll become a collective. And my story, whether it's in my book or say I put it in another anthology, one, I can always I can always self-publish them. So I'm not really worried about that. I'm not really worried about if it makes somebody else's book successful, because my name is still attached to it. Maybe it is different with television and sketch comedy shows. It doesn't necessarily say on the show this was written by such and such artist or writer, but it does do that in comic books. So I don't know. I think when it comes to collaborations, sometimes people think, oh, they're going to be all in your business. They're going to be telling you what to do. I don't think that's the case with this, because in film in general is collaborative. Film in general is collaborative. And whether you are the writer, you are the director, you are the editor, or even the actor, you can have an impact on that story. So, or you're collaborating in it. You're not changing it, but you're inputting it to make it better. You're offering your suggestions. So whether that is with an anthology, a sketch comedy show, or even a movie, single slow, which would be like a one shot, you're collaborating. Books are still sort of collaborative, especially if you got a publishing deal. Your publisher is going to offer a whole lot of different things and suggestions to you. If you're self-published, you're not really going to have to collaborate with anybody. Many times your editor will charge you more if you want them to make suggestions to your story. Sometimes they'll offer minor things, but if it's a lot of stuff that they want to say, they're not going to say it. They'll just take your money for editing and keep it moving, and rightfully so, because maybe there is a lot that needs to be done, and it is enough to charge you a little bit more for that information and helping you make those corrections. I know with my first editing job on my second book, I used an editor that didn't know me, and they charged me for everything. It was a lot of money, so I don't know about that situation, but I did it, and the book came out well. I feel I paid a little too much for it, and I never paid that much for book editing again, but I did learn from the experience. So I don't know, but I do think collaboration is something that isn't a doomsday sentence. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I've collaborated. My stories have been in a bunch of anthologies, like my early one with MV Media, The City. We're sort of collaborative. We all worked on stories based on his Bible that he presented with us, and we all wrote stories within there. I own the rights of my story, and I can still publish it, which I do have plans to do. I have a second book, but I want to write a third and a fourth to make it at least a novel, because it was short stories. But I don't see anything wrong with it. I'd love to hear your comments on collaboration, whether it is putting your story in a book or TV show with other stories, or whether it is just collaborating on your story in general. Some people don't want anybody to tell them anything about their story. Leave them alone. So that's why they self-publish and they write on their own. I think it's fine. I think, collaborating with a book is still fine, whether it's the publisher or not. I don't have a problem with the things that they say, the changes, or whether it's changes that they're suggesting or not, whether you have to argue and make your case or not, that's still fine to me. So anyway, that's it. That's Jeff Carroll, Sci-Fi Express Lane. Make sure you subscribe, like, comment, and share this. All right. I look forward to hearing your comments, reading your comments, talking to you about it. I'm not necessarily hating on getting a publishing deal or going solo, but I do feel that there is definitely different variables, and as an artist, you need to factor those in. All right, peace.